Hello everyone on YouTube and Facebook. This is the 7th week of the Divine Order and the Universe Online Reading Series. We will keep on reading and commenting from page 21. So, hello again.
Hello everyone. A new week, again we will be studying passages from the book. Let's see what we'll read and learn. The words may be same, but our discoveries and insights may be different. For all of us.
Before we begin, there was a question from last week, here. Let me put it on the screen. It may be better reply this before we continue. Let me read Pelin Sarah's question. If the ultimate aim is the evolution of spirits, then our egoistical choices that lead us to a harder path, or choosing the opposite, is not really our responsibility. It seems that the sole responsibility is on the spiritual being that allows the communication between the spirit and the body. After all, we act upon the influences we receive. If my spirit is a novice, then it is obvious, even before I incarnate, that I will not be a person who is important enough to change the world. Again, many evil people in the history were only the pawns of their advanced spirits that manipulated them for their evolution. Am I mistaken to think like this? Please explain. I think we need to make this topic of novice spirits a little bit clearer. What do you think?
Indeed, this friend's question, I don't know who she is one of the most advanced questions a human can ask. Started as a being that incarnated on this world and is at the brink of the completion of a cycle after 60 to 70,000 years. Let's talk about the crux of the matter. Actually, after the emergence of monotheist religions, this was one of the topics the philosophers and the philosophers of religion discuss and argue among themselves, in stuffy rooms, behind closed doors just to keep it out of the attention of masses. And most of them died before even putting forth some answers to it. Yet, I am sure we had been those people. Now the doors are open, the curtains lifted, and the sunlight is entering. Indeed, this topic should have been discussed and entirely solved in the monotheistic religions as well. So, more or less, this is the question this friend asked. Moreover, the spiritualism emerged. And it seems that this question became harder to properly answer. Actually, the answer became explicit. So, the process this question posits, which is, there is a spiritual being and whatever being says, the body does it, and this being gets information and through it, spirit gets information. That kind of situation is only valid, not in each case but only as a generalization, at the plant stage and the animal stage. Even at these stages, there is instinctual, be it automatic instincts or more advanced, yet advanced states, these are automatic actions, only possible by the influences coming from the being. However, when the being attained the human stage, and it is a higher level, right of choice is given to it. And because of this right to choose, human beings' work is harder. Why is this right given? Because we are, as humans, as humankind, at the last bend before the exit leading to the plan of duty. So, human stage is the last bend before it. So we need to do it right. Choosing not automatically but consciously, with our free will and by understanding the flow of events. I mean, as much as possible. So we begin to learn choosing by understanding, by consciously. Because of this, some prohibitions are set for us. Even a dog begins to see these prohibitions against its instincts, as in the example in the book. Dog begins to learn those prohibitions by the stick its owner holds, saying, I give you food but you won't eat now, only when I say you can. Otherwise, I'll hit you. That kind of prohibiting allows choosing. Of course, this is for the puppy. For humans, the first prohibition against instincts was given to Adam and Eve as sacred book tell. Don't eat the fruit of that tree. Saying this and then leaving them to choose. From that point on, everything is up to humans. Then, humans have the merit for the ability to choose and free will. So began the way of choosing by meeting the consequences. It doesn't mean, no mistakes allowed, rather human learnt to see the results of his choosing as correct or wrong, and all of us began to develop that state. At this point attained by our being, after 60 to 70,000 years, we now are able to use the freedom of choosing among tiny details. We begin to decide to choose the religion to adhere, or about people who do or don't rule over us. We begin to make decisions related to family and cultural rules and show the courage to apply these. And we try to do what is right. In none of the animal groups, there is something like doing the right thing, it is only about doing what is necessary for the survival. We use our freedom to choose, even for our own comfort, which is also a material attraction, and this is what is expected from us. And this is one of the highest levels the being utilizes as a body. After this, we will begin, if necessary, do applications of choosing more consciously and much easily in the realm of love, or other semi-subtle realms. Right now, we are at the hard part of this with all those pain and suffering. This is the reason of the test and trials we go through. In the final analysis, we human have the right to choose for moving up to higher/subtler levels. Well, I tried my best to briefly explain all of these.
Last Sunday, in an online lecture she had created a slideshow outlining the stages of being. I'd like to share some slides here, hoping that this subject of novice spirit may become clearer for our friends. Here, as we discussed in our previous videos, there is the amorphous matter that has no ability to move by itself yet to respond when an external influence arrives at it. Next, we see that with the incoming influences from the original principle, this matter gains motion, at first as slight movements, then as initial formations. Next is the emerging of hydrogen atom, which isn't the hydrogen atom we know. Next, with more influences coming, myriad formations and deformations, dispersing and gathering occurs in that matter. Within it, this matter responds by making up concentrations from the finer to cruder states. Next, the hydrogen atom and other atoms and the other elements mankind knows emerge. And as the matter gets developed more and more, the subtle matter emerges, and the process will progress toward the stage of being. After that, plants, animal bodies, experiences in the transitional milieus, advancing towards becoming human, and as you said, after 500 to 700 lifetimes later, advancing toward suprahuman. And we are now at the level of completing the hydrogen cosmos. So, when we look at this progress, we see that the spirit is novice of the matter of our own universe, the amorphous matter. With the first influence arriving at matter, it will be developed towards becoming the first hydrogen atom, but prior to this, there is first a field of darkness and a stage of passive adaptations. Please watch our previous videos where we discuss these in detail. Yes, a spirit bonds with an atom and goes through a seemingly infinite process of passive evolutionary progress with that atom. So, when we say novice spirits, we talk about a state way before the occurrence of the being, the plants, the animals. The book mentions these as slight movements that occurred after the first influence arriving at the matter of our universe. That's the stage we simply define as novice spirit, and as we read on, you will see more details how the beings emerge, later primitive plant cells, then plant bodies. All stages the book details. I made a list here. Next, animal cells, animal body, then governing a whole animal body. Later, again, transitional milieus, subhuman levels, human stage. We are now at the last phases of the human stage, just before passing to the plan of love, after going through the evolution by having 500 to 700 lifetimes. So, we are now living this last period. And by completing this stage in the hydrogen cosmos, we pass to the plan of love. And after the plan of love, going through plan of duty, and after completing the stages within the process of advancing toward the utmost point that we can reach. Now, as to the issue of choices, so, Spirit made a being out of matter and put this being going through 500 minus 700 lifetimes of experiences, and brought this being up to the point of human stage, and as the book will tell us later in detail. As our comprehension increase, and as we move out of the mechanical and automatic stages, our beings become more involved in planning our life plans. Therefore, it is not like everything is destined. Then my being good or bad here, I because of my spirit. Today we will read the topic of duality, the negative and positive polarization, and the value differentiation, which are all about the being's choices. So, I wanted to remind all of these beforehand, so our friends can see what they will read throughout the book, and also see the stage where the spirits are novice clearly. Here is another slide Tamirhan prepared, but I tweaked it a little. So, we can see the stages here as well. These figures are the visual aids summarizing what is detailed in the book. Because our brains understand things better when they are visualized, so in our previous videos we discussed the amorphous matter, the first hydrogen atom and elements, etc., and now, gradually, we begin to read and discuss the fundamental principles within this material system. Well, I wanted contributing to this reply by reminding you these previous parts.
Thank you. It's technical but explains the workings of our cosmos. If we can internalize this, then we can solve this problem of balance. That is, the events in our lives, our worries, our confusions, the ways of people's actions toward us, and those strange timing of those actions, etc. I think we can solve all of these by what we talk today.
All right, now let's keep on reading. Now, we will indicate the various mechanisms regarding the influences that are continuously coming into matter and causing its reactions. Thus we will enter the topic of a very important reality which is directly pertinent to the constitution of matter, which is the duality principle and the reality of value differentiation. Matter's ability to realize its possibility of manifestation depends on the activity it will exhibit in its milieu. However, no activity occurs without motion. That is, the activity of a matter means that it displays motion, and the emergence of motion in matter is possible through equilibrium changes. Therefore, for motion to occur in the constitution of matter in our realm, first of all there must be two components that provide equilibrium, and then, by adding more value to one of these components, the equilibrium must be disrupted in order to be restored again. So, the existence of these opposing components in matter and differentiating the values between these components express the reality of the duality principle and the reality of value differentiation. Studying the duality principle and the mechanism of value differentiation, which are pertinent to the constitution of matter, makes it possible to explain the motions in matter. There are myriad motion complexes in all universe parts, starting with the initial amorphous substance of our realm to those extending way beyond of it. These motions resulting in the manifestations of these parts with infinite qualities and quantities constitute two separate value groups in matter, which are exact opposites in character, but at the same time support each other, in accordance with the principle of equilibrium. In the case of one of these opposite values that remains in equilibrium in the structures of matter combinations receiving more charge, or more correctly, more influences than the other one in comparison results in the disruption of equilibrium between them, and for these disrupted components of equilibrium to be restored back to a state of equilibrium. The value starts to flux from one of them to another, and this condition causes various motions to occur. So, adding more value to one or another of the opposites to a certain degree to disrupt equilibrium creates different states between them. We name this state value differentiation or quantitative transitions. Well, it's a little bit long passage, but I think these are clear statements that summarizes the topic.
Here, what caught my attention at first was this phrase. For motion to occur in the constitution of matter in our realm. So, duality principle exists, and it is valid for the first hydrogen atom cosmos. And the value differentiation is the appearance of the duality principle in our cosmos. Yes, there is duality principle in the plan of duty as well, but it appears there in an incomprehensible and indescribable way for us, for now. Because we can only sense the duty. We can't comprehend it entirely. It is not that we are assigned a job and we do it, this is the duty. In the plan of duty, groups take the duty and do it. It is not like this. This is only its version adapted to our reality. So, because of this we cannot guess about the duality principle in that realm. However, its way of operation in our cosmos is the value differentiation. That is, disruption of the equilibrium and its restoration at whichever side the charge or the influence intensified. Polarity is not a correct word for it. Whichever side of the equilibrium has more influence, balance shifts toward that side. When you read it first time, to help your understanding, the book will give an example of a magnet, but this is a very crude description of the process. It is very crude. So please do not consider this as polarity. Please do not think it as the increase and decrease of the negative and positive. Positive and negative are only the way of appearing of those values together. It is not that system is elevated by continuously giving it more positive influences. Well, the good of the old is the bad of the new. This is a spiritual principle. If we are developed what we previously deemed as good is now insufficient or bad now. In the further pages of the book, this will be explained as the duty aspect and selfish aspects of the conscience mechanism. And the book displays the duality and the value differentiation in a very practical way. Something that seems positive or optimistic to us now later will be negative or insufficient for us. So, let's give up considering the influences as bad or good. And let's interest ourselves in the intensity of our frequency, of vibration, of our level of being, that is, the motion of our matter, and let's interest ourselves in the degree our thoughts, actions, duties vibrate closely with our being, not only with our body is just a small part of our being. Our purpose is, by elevating the level of our body and of our being toward the borders of the plan of duty. This is our sole purpose. And to be able to do this, our equilibrium should be disrupted. Of course, this makes a negative appearance. Yet, the disruption of the equilibrium is not what we get by losing balance. Yes, it is similar, but it is not Pollyannaism either, like saying, something bad happened. Our equilibrium is disrupted. Therefore, this is an opportunity for development. Let's look at it as a good thing. Well, if we keep on trying to interpret such things like that, this makes us again automatic. I see this in my own life and I sometimes observe this in my friends' lives. Even if a person has the knowledge of this, he still can say, well, this thing happened and I lost my equilibrium. Therefore, I am developing. Yes, taking things in this way is good, but we must be careful not doing it in an automatic manner. The thing we need to do whenever our balance is off is to think about what was the previous state of equilibrium, and to discover what was the factor, the influence disturbing it and the real reason of choosing that influence. Because we need to elevate, ascend our being. And by elevating, I mean evolution. And that influence is a clue for us in this discovery. It is not an end for us but a clue. And the end of it will be gradually guessed by us as in time. From the incoming influence, we indeed understand or glean many things. Here, as I talk about this, I consider the events in our lives. However, this is valid also for the balance of our body, or for the circuit of electrical current.
So, there is a need for an opposingly working mechanism for the motion to occur in matter. This passage points to this dynamic that allows the motion to occur and that exists in the most fundamental constitution of matter. As you remember, amorphous matter was motionless and inert, that is, passive, and the book had defined the spirit as active. So, the matter gained motion by both the influences coming from the original principle and the spirit. So, the most opposite factors are between matter and spirit, and the flow of influence occurs from one place to another, and the recipient responds to it by motion. Remember that spirit is supra-universe. It sent an influence to matter which was amorphous, and it responded to this. And within this capacity of responding, variations occurred in accord with the degree of capacity. And to allow the advancement through these varied levels, polarities occurred between two poles, positive and negative, as matter responds by reaching up and spirit influences by sending down. A constant comings and goings happen between these polarities. And within this polarity, what is in the lower level tries to go up, and what is in the higher level sends influences down to pull it up higher. We can see this dynamic, as the book says, in the daily events, in emotions. However, the book defines this here mostly as the basic dynamic within matter.
So, just like this, an influence comes and disrupts the equilibrium in the makeup of the atom and allows an electron to jump, or break away, let's say, from a metal. Likewise, when we give some energy or influence to the atom, electrons buzzing around will go out the next orbit, or 2 or 3 orbits higher. And when that energy is exhausted, those electrons come back to their initial orbit. That is, we can understand that even at the most elementary level, if an influence arrives at matter, it creates corresponding motion in it. We don't necessarily observe this, yet the whole order is built up on this fact. We should sense it, intuit it, imagine it. That's enough. As Richard Feynman says, what I cannot create, I don't understand, he says, create, but I say, imagine. As Einstein dedicated a part of his lectures in the university to imagination exercises. Imagination is that much important. So, this fact must be imagined in our minds whenever I say motion. We must understand this as whole elementary system, the whole hydrogen atom cosmos of our universe has these kinds of motions, via the flux of influences that allow successive reactions triggering each other. In this flux, matter influences matter, spirit has no hand, no voice, no I in this. Matter influences matter. This is the rule of the matter universe.
So, what makes the motion is the disruption of equilibrium between two opposite values, an ongoing back and forth process, until the balance restored at some point. This happens via the flowing from what is more to the less. Therefore, motion occurs through this search for balance between these opposites. It is enough to know that as a principle. It is valid in emotions, in events, in the atomic structure of matter, in all kinds of physical phenomena. And remember that the divine order and the universe points that even our emotions are of matter. So, it is useful to consider this basic principle. And the value differentiation occurs when we flow, orient or send more value to one of those opposites, and we shift towards it. The book explains this as quantitative transitions. I think these statements are clear enough.
They are, but let me repeat something I previously said. If this is so, and this is so, if everything that is happening to us are in the direction of our development, and if the coming influence disrupts our equilibrium and drives us to ask questions, then it is better to study that influence as we study ourselves. That influence will give us the biggest clue. As Einstein says, the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. We may find the same meaning in the Quran, at the Surah Ash-Shar. Alright, now let's continue reading.
Therefore, every matter combination is but a unit, which is the result of two opposite values. If we take only one of the opposites of this matter unit, or matter combination, which contains two opposite values, we see again that this is also composed of two opposite values. This situation goes on like this back to the primary matter. Because of this, it is necessary to name each of these matter combinations as a duality unit. This term may be defined as a unity that expresses two components. In order to offer a simple idea about this duality unit, we will give an example, although it is crude, of a bar magnet. This bar magnet is a unit that exhibits two kinds of magnetic manifestation. Starting from the middle of it, one half is signed positive and the other half is negative, which are opposite in character. The point in the middle of this unit where two opposite values with different signs join together is neutral. That is, there is no magnetic manifestation there. By cutting this bar magnet from the neutral point, when we separately examine the halves that fall to the right and left side, we again observe that each of them has entered a state of duality unit on their own which exhibits magnetic manifestation with one half positive and the other half negative as opposites. As these pieces are continuously being split in the middle and separated into two parts, duality manifestations go on and on. That is, at each division of the bar magnet, components of magnetism with two opposite characters generate new unities, new units in smaller scale than the previous ones. So, we name this reality, which is one of the most important laws of our realm. The duality principle belonging to matter constitution, and the value differentiation or quantitative transitions we have mentioned is an additional mechanism of this duality principle. The duality principle and its dependent mechanism of value differentiation form the most important basis, allowing the realization of possibilities within the occurrences and fluxes of matter in our realm. Without these, neither states nor forms nor material manifestations are possible. For, when these principles vanish, no emergence of motion may occur in matter. And without motions, and the development and transitions of matter into myriad states. In brief, their involvement in the building mechanisms of worlds are not possible. That is, worlds cannot be formed. Here, please notice that last sentence. The book says worlds, not world.
And let's not think that this is all about negative and positive. Yes, the only property of the magnet is having two polarities. However, in the elementary level, this is also related to the direction of the electron's spin, clockwise or anti-clockwise. Actually, I'd like to say there are such particles that have such a motion that they enter into the earth from some point and get out from another point. Indeed, they are entering and exiting our bodies right now, and they are not bothering with us, with Earth. They are not affected by the heat or the coldness of the Earth. They travel through space, not bothering with the absolute zero of the space. They continue their motion without being affected by anything. They are all over the hydrogen atom cosmos, but this is such a constitution that not all influences strike it. Yet, this is an important observation. We must imagine, visualize this. We are in such a material world. What we see and feel is only a small fraction of this cosmos. We must accept this.
Let's continue reading the last paragraph on this page. On Earth, duality always exists. In everything, in all radiations of matter, in the essentials and details of matter, in all psychological states that are actually variations of matter but appear as devoid of matter. In matter called inanimate, in matter called animated, in individuals, in states of individuals in the face of each other, collectively, in feelings and in ideas, shortly, in all conditions of the world observable and unobservable. The duality principle and the mechanism of value differentiation prevail. And in every state of matter that appears as a unity, there are always two components which are opposite to each other and in equilibrium. Existence of these opposite components in a unity is necessary because without this, matter cannot come forth, live, it disintegrates. And in the case of matter that does not exist, existence of anything cannot be talked about. On Earth and in the whole of our cosmos, Everything that appears as one or as a unity is actually composed of two values, which are in opposite character to each other and which can never be isolated from each other. But these opposite values are not two independent, completely separate components from each other. They are two components dependent on each other, but with opposite appearances that compose the character of an individual unit. All parts that constitute our world and even the initial matter of Earth, which is one of these parts, cannot be outside the scope of duality principle. We repeat the main knowledge on this as a summary. 1. Unit is the name of duality. That is why we call it a duality unit. The opposites of duality are not made up of a single value. Again, in smaller scales they are each duality units. 3. Duality, as will be explained in the topic on constitution of initial matter, is the initial origin and basis of motion. 4. Without the duality mechanism, motion cannot exist, and without motion, matter states and forms cannot exist. 5. Duality is the original appearance of the state of spirit and matter. Regarding the ideas mentioned in the last item, we feel the need to provide further explanation. We have said that in the matter universe, spirit and matter cannot be in conjunction with each other. That is, the concept of spirit, matter directly interacting with each other in the universe cannot be a real concept. Nevertheless, from this statement, a meaning such as rejecting the existence of spirit and accepting only the existence of matter must not be inferred. In effect, there is not a spirit-matter reality in the universe that directly exchanges influences between them, sending something to each other from themselves. However, the existence of matter, which constitutes the basis of the universe, is not without purpose and reason. We have mentioned before that the reason for the existence of matter is actually to service a spirit. The expression of this truth is hidden in the duality of matter, such that the purpose of matter's existence is its service to spirit. Servicing the spirit happens through spirits utilizing matter's possibilities of development in all kinds of states and forms. And utilizing these possibilities depends on a number of motions that are able to emerge in matter through indirect influences arising from spirit. However, the occurrence of every motion in matter is only possible through the duality principle and the mechanism of value differentiation. That is, were it not for the duality principle and its additional mechanism of value differentiation, it would not be possible for spirit to utilize matter. In that case, the spirit-matter relationship cannot be realized. Therefore, duality, the mechanism of value differentiation, is an expression of the necessity of spirit-matter duality. More correctly, when the duality principle in matter is examined in that regard, it becomes the original appearance of spirit-matter duality, that is, its imperativeness, in the face of the sublime principles.
This is a little bit long, but
it explains things nicely. Within each unit, there are opposite aspects. No matter how small or fragmented is the duality unit, each unit always consists two opposite aspects. It is expressed clearly here.
Another thing it expressed is the duality principle is the original appearance of spirit-matter duality. And after listing the items, it elaborates on this concept. I'll give an example in the terms of influence. When an influence arrives, as I just mentioned, this influence is not one polarity. If we understand this, to whatever that influence goes to, wherever is its target, it indicates what is lacking there, in the thing it sets into motion. The part that needs to increase its motion. That polarity of the influence is needed there. Because of this, we need to study the influences. The property of the influence tells us which part or way its target needs to develop. This is a very important clue. I repeated this a few times today. So please don't overlook this. It is a very important clue in understanding the events of life. What else we need to discuss here? Spirit-matter duality.
We already mentioned it as one is being passive, the other active. This passage, in a nutshell, talks about how matter is at service to spirit. There is a comment from Ms. Nesrin Ahin saying, according to the description of the book, I am a lab tool of the being. And you say free will. Even the whole matter universe is a servant, a slave to spirit. It depends on the perspective. Of course, we don't talk about being at service from the emotional angle, the slavery concept of the current world conditions, but in the sense of matters being a mediatory, facilitator to spirit, and its development is connected to the other's evolution. It's better not to take this as the slavery, subjecting like in our worldly understanding. Otherwise, this is an emotional approach to this concept. From the other angle, actually it gives a constant service to the spirit by receiving influences into itself, and as it gets developed by responding these via formations, deformations, it accumulates experience and information and conveys this as knowledge. The book will explain it as the essence knowledge. When we will read how it is done, then you will see that this comment of slavery is not correct. What do you say?
I can give an explanation to this. We have a human-centered approach. We cognized ourselves as humans and we resist strongly to stay as humans. However, if we can elevate our comprehension, our understanding, our feelings as much as higher, that is, higher than the understanding ourselves as merely bodies, if we can do this in our daily lives, as we meditate, work, listen, watch and live, if we can get closer to our being, to our essence in our understanding, we begin to notice that the slave is the body but our minds are not, because we have the free will. And an enlightened, awakened or evolved human is a person who extended her comprehension toward the universe, who is aware that what he uses is only a body. We mostly feel humanity is a body that is bipedal, has a head, arms and legs, has intestines, has a heart and a brain. That is, we see ourselves only as a hydrogen atom vehicle. However, when we say, there is an I within me, we mean the essential self, and this is our being. And when we get closer to our being and begin to understand this, then we can say, yes, the body is a servant, a subject, but we are not our body. We, together with our being and our spirit, are an essence that comprehend matter. We need to accept it like this.
And also, we don't make those choices in our current level of comprehension. After all, in this matter universe, in this current system of hydrogen cosmos, mostly we are in an automatic or semi-comprehending state. In this sense, we don't make choices with our current brain, with our current understanding. There is even a comment from a friend saying current research show that we make a choice after 50 milliseconds following our action. Then, how do we make our decisions?
Experiments of Benjamin Libet. His findings showed that before we decide to make a movement, our brain waves already in action, as if there is some influence already arrived and we moved accordingly. And in many occasions, it is found that those brain waves peaked before a decision made or way after the decision made, as shown in Radin's experiments. All of these actually indicate that we are not only bodies that has organs, but all parts of this organism are actually our gloves in this level. If we can understand this, very well. And of course, we also understand we must take care of our bodies. Also, we stop imprisoning ourselves within the limits of our bodies.
And once again, let's remember that our being is a perceptual point of gathering, which accumulated the knowledge gleaned from 500 to 700 lifetimes. A perceptual point of accumulative comprehensions which gathered a vast expanse of comprehensions and influences. We will understand this better when we read the related passages. Remember that we are only in the beginning of the book yet. To understand the rest of it better, we must elaborate on these initial passages. We understand the questions our friends asked, but we think that if you read the whole book before watching the videos in this online reading series, it would be better. Yes, time flew again. It is 10 p.m. already.
Superficial time does not stop. We already discussed many things and I think we managed to give ideas to our friends so they can imagine and visualize.
We do our best to give different ideas. Good night, everyone.
Good night.